The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so happy that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program. The show is for caregivers, also for professionals who need and want to learn more about caregiving. It's not an easy thing. There's so much information out there, but somehow caregivers sometimes just don't even know where to go to start to learn. So this is a great resource for caregivers who can't get out of the house to go to support groups, don't want to go to seminars, just want to be more private about their educational excursions until they're ready, to take that first step and go and visit perhaps assisted livings or maybe even nursing homes. Whatever your situation is, it's okay, because caregiving is a journey, and we talk to caregivers who have been there, been in your shoes, traveled along that same path, and who better to learn from than those people who have really walked in your shoes. We also have wonderful guests that come onto the program that are experts in their field. These experts range from elder law attorneys, social workers, geriatric care managers, nurses, all kinds of experts that help caregivers in their various fields. So this show is a resource, and I hope you find that it can help you and perhaps others that you might share it with. So if you're listening on local Southeast radio, thank you for that. If you're tuning in via the internet and watching us live stream on caregiversolutions.info, thank you for that. You can also listen on the iHeartRadio app. So that's another way you can tune in no matter where you are. So today we're going to be talking to someone who is actually backed by popular demand. She is an expert in her field. She has the education and the experience and the hands-on to be able to come to you, the caregiver, with tons of information. And we're going to go right to her because she's joining us via the telephone. She lives on the other coast of Florida, and her name is Dr. Kate McCarty. Dr. Kate, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Marcia. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That's great. That's great. We have your picture up, split on the screen, so everyone can see you. And says Dr. Kate McCarty, certified dementia coach, and that is you.
Well, I'm not actually certified. I was a dementia coach before there was any certification, so I'm certifiable sometimes. But I do have my PhD with a focus on quality of life for individuals with dementia. And I think what's more important is I have over 40 years of experience of working with individuals who are dealing with dementia.
Well, I think that makes you...
From that, I named my company Dr. Kate Dementia Coach, and then I sailed the Caribbean, and I came back and found out there's a certification for this. Right?
So that means you're a forerunner in this field because you were doing it before everybody caught up with you.
Absolutely. absolutely. That happens a lot. I often say, oh, well, darn it. Well, I was a nurse's aide before anybody certified nurse's aide, is an example. So when I train CNAs, they look at me like I was, born with Moses or something. But no, back in the day, they just told you to go bathe people and gave you a washcloth.
Well,
there wasn't a whole training thing.
right. Well,
Yes.
and now there is. I think we're getting a little
And thank heaven.
smarter
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
A lot more education, a lot more training. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so I want to talk to you about what you do. But first of all, to let everybody know what education you do have. You do have your PhD, and explain what that is in.
My PhD is in aging studies, which used to be called gerontology. I think USF decided to get trendy and changed it to the study of aging or aging studies. And my dissertation was focused on quality of life at end of life for individuals with dementia. That kind of was all from my years of experience I started as a nurse's aide in nursing homes. I ended up in activities in nursing homes, but along the way I was a companion. I've been a home health aide. I have been an adult daycare provider. So I have had a lot of, I've tried all the different modalities of solution, which is nice. It gives me a perspective that I think a lot of folks don't have, maybe.
Well, that's true, because certainly with all of your years of experience and hands-on, because I think experience, kind of trumps a lot of things. But in addition to that, having the PhD in the aging studies and combining these two together, you are an expert in your field. And I know for a fact that you have helped numerous families near and far. So let's talk about what a dementia coach is, because that's who you are, that's what you do. But what does a dementia coach actually do?
Well, I can speak from my perspective. I do a lot of kind of single session advice. I tend to be very practical. I don't know what the certified dementia coaches do, but I often am just troubleshooting. So a family will reach out and they'll say, my mom has been every afternoon. She gets all agitated. I don't know what to do. And sometimes the people don't even realize that that's a phenomenon called sundowning. So we can go over a little bit of what the phenomenon is called, and then we can strategize on how we can choose things different. Earlier in the day, it might be there are some nutritional, and then I can also sort of coach through a role playing, like, well, what do you say when your mom's agitated? Or, there's I tend to be very practical. Someone recently said, my husband starts pacing at about 2:30. It drives me nuts. And my instant go-to, because of working in dementia units for so much of my career, is, well, do you have a Bissell sleeper? And she looks at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, we have found that if it's a non-electric, simple sleeper, it can be a way to give a purpose to the pacing. And it sort of kind of takes the energy down, as well as the person starts feeling like they're doing something. So that was one strategy. Now, every strategy doesn't work for every person. One of my peers in the world of Alzheimer's says, if you know one person with Alzheimer's, you know one person with Alzheimer's. That is very true. So, we try to pull out from our toolbox, and for me, my toolbox has a lot of different things in it because of the years of trying different things, is it one of the research pieces on sundowning, which really surprised me, because I always thought a good strenuous activity session in the afternoon was the way to handle sundowning. And what the research actually shows is that it actually accelerates sundowning. It actually adds the agitation. Much more effective is to be closing the blinds, quieting the environment, kind of, and this is a terrible analogy for people, but I tend to be very animal focused too, a little bit like what the hens are doing as day comes to an end. We as people tend to need that wind down as well. So, and that doesn't always work for the women. Often you find women are like, they start getting agitated in the afternoon and like, well, I got to get home to get to the kids. I need to get to the kids. And of course, so much of my training came from Arden Court because I was trained by Arden Court. I worked with them a good bit over the years. And one of the strategies is, well, the kids are getting off the bus. Well, what will we do with the kids when they get off the bus? So in other words, I validate. Validation is so important. Naomi File is one of my heroes that I learned about through a session of training that we were sent 2 years ago. So I'm not denying her. I'm not telling her there are no kids or kids are old, the kids are raised. I'm not doing any of those things that are very detrimental to her self-esteem and to her sense of reality. But I'm going to meet her there, and I'm going to say, so when the kids get off the bus, what would you like to do? Or maybe we should make some cookies, or finding a way to join them. I'm not totally repainting the picture, but I'm going to go where the picture's taking me.
Okay, so this validation therapy, so what purpose does it serve? Because a lot of people would say, well, you're just feeding into their delusions.
What do we have to gain? I'm going to do devil's advocate. What do we have to gain by trying to argue with their delusion?
That's right. Point, I mean, you'll never win an argument.
You can't win.
No.
You're not going to win. But validation is very much based in the idea that the things that are coming up with an individual further on in the process, and maybe age specific, are related to things from the past. So this is something that this person is struggling to work through while dealing with a diagnosis of some sort of brain change. That's sort of how that's how Naomi File has. She was a social worker. That's how she has painted the picture on validation. So by saying, what would we like to do when the kids get off the bus, I'm giving her, the individual who's struggling, permission to maybe recreate what maybe didn't happen in the past. One of the best parts about Naomi File, that's not what we're talking about here, but she was such a graphic trainer. She would jump on the table and become the individual with dementia. And then she would say, after she'd done her little role playing, she would point her finger out to us as the audience and say, you better get a grip on all your conflicts right now. Work through them now, because one day you're going to be stuck maybe with a mind full of flax and tangles, and you're going to be trying to work these things through. And somebody's going to offer you bingo or say, no, your kids are all old now. And meanwhile, you're trying to work something out from a stage. This goes back to Erik Erikson, the stages that we progress through as we age. Very psychological. There are many different psychological ways of looking at how we change as we age, but Erikson did it in a stage development way, and there were tasks that we had to complete. And his thinking, and then Naomi is built on that, is that if you don't complete this task, you will be kind of stuck there until you are able to complete it.
Right. Well, also by doing the validation therapy, it sort of diffuses the situation because of the sundowning, and they're getting all agitated by getting into their world and then talking about something. You're actually distracting them from, being agitated because you're talking about something that is on their mind that they're familiar with. And in a way, it calms them down rather than building up more agitation.
Absolutely, because we didn't just say, oh, tell me more about your children. We said, hey, what do we want to do about that? Do we want to go make some cookies? So we're redirecting as well as acknowledging, redirecting and validating. And then we can talk about, as we mix up cookies, you can say, So let's see, there was Susie, Johnny, and Jim. This is where biography is so important because I just pulled random names out. If I had the real names, it would be much more powerful, right? Which one came home first? Now, this mom may not know who came home first, but any biographical clue I have, like, oh, and Susie had her braids in, or she's the redhead, right? Again, brings up self-esteem. It's like I can just see the person kind of rising and putting their shoulders back a little. Yeah, and she always likes my chocolate chip cookies.
Right. Well,
we've taken a whole new branch.
Yes. And you've gone in another direction, which is something that, the person with the dementia, they have feelings too. And they need sometimes just to vent, and they need to be heard just like anybody else. And I know a lot of people sometimes want to ignore that or kind of shut them down. But if you allow, in my experience, if you allow a person with dementia who wants to talk and who is venting and let them get that out and let them feel that they're being heard, it makes a huge difference in their behavior.
Oh, yes. Huge. As opposed to what the classic thing is, no, sit down, or let's watch Jeopardy, or, none of those are really going to do it because you haven't given them any path to take that sort of relates to where they're anxious.
Right. So Dr. Kate, so one of the things then that you do as a dementia coach, as you've just explained, is that you educate caregivers. So this is a education process, right? And you're giving them information about why maybe mom is sundowning, how you can relate to her, what techniques you can use to better serve her. So it's education that you provide to the caregivers. And one important thing I think to note is you don't diagnose.
No, I do not. I can say, in my humble opinion, it looks like this is not straight Alzheimer's and you need to go to your neurologist or neuropsychologist for further testing, But I'm only using anecdotal. Yeah, I never prescribe any medication. It's not in my purview. I'm not an MD. But I can do a lot of therapeutic kind of prescription, like, have you considered that maybe they need a purpose? And let's look at our biography and see what kind of purposeful activity we could come up with. I do work for an adult day over here in Largo, and we find that some of the best activities we do are ones that are clearly about giving back. So, and an example, some of my folks are very late stage, but I can tell you they can make an amazing set of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I mean, we could make hundreds of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
That might come in handy sometime.
Yes, I know.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more to Dr. Kate about how a dementia coach can help caregivers. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
And welcome back to the show. My special guest today is Dr. Kate McCarty, PhD. Not only is she a great person, she is also a dementia coach, and she's also an author of a couple books on caregiving. And so welcome to the show again, Dr. Kate.
Welcome. Thank you.
So we're talking about what a dementia coach does, and one of the things that we're talking about is helping caregivers to understand behaviors, because as a dementia coach, you understand the behaviors that a person with dementia may exhibit, and you are educating caregivers on how to best maybe resolve some issues. So in addition to that, would you say that a dementia coach should be able to make referrals if necessary to other providers or healthcare people?
Oh, absolutely. I try to keep a good posse of referral sources. I have my own personal ones because I am a caregiver myself, but I also have ones that I know. An example, a man has just texted me asking for someone, and he's very resistant to home health prices. I fortunately know his wife well enough that I can suggest a companion service. He's looking for a church lady that's $10 an hour, and I unfortunately don't know any church ladies like that. But I do know a companion service that I know and trust that's in the $13 to $15 or $16 range an hour. So that's something I can share with him. I don't have any. Once I've given him the contact info, it's out of my hands. But I try to kind of keep on top of what my primary sources and who I feel comfortable with over here in this neck of the woods,
right,
or nationally. I know who the national big dogs are too, so that helps.
Right. So you can help a caregiver, lead them down the path to other resources such as the Alzheimer's Association, or perhaps some neurologist or psychiatrist or psychologist that could probably help. So you can make that recommendation, because a lot of times I think caregivers don't know who to go to or where to turn. And just by someone saying, hey, why don't you give this professional a call, because, I've referred to them in the past and they've really helped that other person. So I think, you can help kind of make that journey a little easier when you have those resources that you can, share with others.
Absolutely. An example from my personal life is that we're, as a couple, dealing with a possible frontotemporal dementia diagnosis. I say possible because it's very difficult to quantify those. It takes some very advanced scans. And right now, I guess we've just been made aware of some in Jacksonville, but that's not where we live. But we're dealing with some changes. And one of the things because of the folks that I have been in contact with and I've been professionally aligned with, our financial planner and our elder lawyer directed us to a guardianship lawyer. We don't need a guardianship as it's traditionally written, but we're looking at the idea of a voluntary, where she's offering us the ability to put a little more control, because there's some impulsivity that comes with further along with this diagnosis, which kind of gives me a lot of anxiety in the middle of the night. So the possibility of maybe having a voluntary guardianship. So see, these are ways that interconnection. I met these people at a study group, 10 years ago. We've stayed connected, and now I know that this is an option. And so, by her working with me, I can then trust to suggest that to someone else. And always with the idea that well, this is something to consider. I don't know if it'll work for you. 'Cause,
Right.
again, we're all individuals. Every one of our finances are different, and there's so much, unique about each of us.
Right. So what you're doing personally is building your own team, your own support team, and then you
Yes.
can go out and help, a new caregiver help build their support team, because I think that's what it's all about, is having the support in place and having a team of professionals and non-professionals doing unique things that you can rely on to be that support for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I call it my posse. I have a posse because it's like the folks that are behind you that are equally capable and have your back. If you go for a Western theme. But yes, I think it's very important. We just had a seminar. We do a quarterly seminar with Kids All Day that I'm working with over here, and I spoke a little bit on this. And I think too often what happens is that we get a diagnosis and the behaviors start cranking up, and that's number one on a scale of possible solutions. And we jump all the way to 10, which is placement, which is okay. It's not a bad choice. But I really try to educate people that there are a lot of steps that can be taken before you get to 10.
Well, like I said, it's a journey, and everyone's journey is different. So you have to really dig in and find out, right? Yeah.
That's the truth. And, you want to go for a quality 10, and you want to go for, and if that's your first choice, that's fine. But what happens, I think, is I'm doing a blog for Arden. My next blog will be on this. We used to call it denial, and the research is now calling it avoidant coping. So rather than approach coping, which is, I visualize the classic whitewater rafting picture. And in order to stay in your canoe or your raft, you need to kind of lean into it. Otherwise, you get bumped out easier. So approaching the problem, so leaning into it and having your eyes wide open. Too often we lean back and we're avoiding. And in that avoidance is where we don't really get to use the options that we really have right in front of us.
Yeah, that's true. Procrastination, avoidance, sometimes it just makes the situation worse. One of the things that you also do that I want to talk about is this program that you're running over there in the Largo area. Also, it's all over the country, probably different parts of the world, but it's called the Memory Cafe. Can you speak to that for us?
Sure. Memory Cafe is a concept that started in Europe. There's two stories about how it started. I know the ins and outs of, I'll give you the generic. A couple early in a diagnosis. So the one in the England story is that Norm McNamara, and he had a Lewy bodies diagnosis. And in looking for ways to best deal with a diagnosis, it became very evident to them in the research and in their own lives that social setting, social friendship, a social support network were very important to continuing to maintain his brain as best he could, and B, were shrinking because of his diagnosis. And the same goes for this other couple, I think, who were in Norway. So they decided to start to meet with others who were dealing with the same thing, not as a support group, but as a social setting, a socialization spot.
So a memory cafe.
Some of them weekly.
Right.
Yeah. So it's strictly for that social interaction. There is a lot of support that's gained. The way I like to say it is that you never need a Kleenex, a tissue, at a memory cafe, where at support groups sometimes they can be very sad, some people don't feel comfortable in support groups. But memory cafe is very light, airy, I run a couple different kinds. One's activity-based, one's more restaurant-based. We even have two that are combos where we meet at the mall, have a walking club, because walking is so good to help maintain your brain. And then we meet at a restaurant and have like a simplified menu and have a memory cafe. So it's a way to make friends. It's been very powerful. Mike and I, because we're sort of running them, we benefit greatly from them as a couple, because then you find that suddenly people are going out after hours, and like there's one couple wants to teach us the game of euchre. I have no idea what that is, but we're gonna set up a date, So when you have your regular folks that are friendly but somewhat put off by some changes, and they maybe start backing off, you have a brand new set of people. It's very powerful. I've been amazed because of us being qualifying as Memory Cafe participants and how powerful it is. It's taken on a life of its own that's pretty amazing. And it's global. So there is a site called the Purple Angel, and you can just type in Purple Angel, and then when it says search, you look for Memory Cafe, and it is global. I mean, you can go to a memory cafe in Timbuktu, not literally, but sort of.
Yeah. So just to clarify, Dr. Kate, the memory cafes are for both the person with the dementia and their primary caregiver, right?
Yes, and that's actually one of the cool things about it. It's an opportunity for Mike and I to have a great social event. We're not looking at our phones. We're actually enjoying ourselves, which we do enjoy ourselves when we go out alone still. But it's like something to look forward to. I think we're very engaged. However, it's not solely for that. We originally thought that it had to be a person with a care companion, but we have several in our region who come alone. They're still driving. They know there's dementia. They know there are memory problems, and they've been coming 2 years. And now I'm reaching out to their family saying, hey, I have your contact information, because sometimes we get worried if she doesn't answer, So it's an interesting kind of an umbrella for us, what sometimes feels like a deluge.
Well,
that's got a real sturdy umbrella.
Yeah, that's very interesting what you said about some people come to the memory cafe on their own that have been maybe diagnosed. Maybe it's just a MCI, a mild cognitive impairment, or very, very early stage dementia. They're even still driving, and they find that it's approachable, that they feel comfortable coming to a memory cafe where they don't really have a care partner at this point, but they know that they can have that interaction, socialization, and feel comfortable around others when maybe they're going to forget a word, or maybe, they feel like people aren't going to judge them like they would in a regular social interaction situation.
So true. Yeah, it's been really heartwarming. We just started one up here at East Lake. It's through Arden Courts of Palm Harbor. And we had one fellow come, and you never know what the diagnosis is. You kind of hold back. And he said, well, yeah, I heard about you through my neurologist, and I left my wife at home. I didn't think she needed to come. And see, sometimes that happens, too. We have one lady down in Gulfport. She leaves her husband at home because she needs to get away, So it's like I said, it's like this big golf umbrella that's really sturdy, and even though it's raining buckets, it's a safe place to be under for an hour or 2 hours. It's usually 2 or 3 sometimes hours long, because they really get going.
Yeah, so that's really
I usually do a theme.
Good option.
It kind of gets yeah.
Very good option for people to have a safe place to go where they feel comfortable and being around others that maybe are in the same boat, and but not to a degree, where they still don't have choices. I really, really like that, and wish you well on the memory cafes, and continue to get them going and help a lot of people. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Dr. Kate has more to share. Stay tuned.
Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts.
Question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts serves caregivers and the ones that have dementia, and they are all over the United States in 50 different locations. We are lucky enough to have 10 right here in Florida, and they are there to help you, the caregiver, in lots of different ways. And one of the ways I'd like to help you today is if you're listening and you don't have this book called the 36-Hour Day Book, they want to give it to you absolutely free. I highly recommend that you call Arden Courts on their toll-free line. Let them know that you heard about this free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and they'll be happy to get your name and address and make sure that they mail a book to you. So all you have to do to get this free book is call the toll-free number 888-478-2410. That's 888-478-2410. Call them today and get your book, The 36-Hour Day. It's an awesome read, and you'll find it very helpful, I'm sure. So my guest today is Dr. Kate McCarty. She's PhD, and she is a dementia coach. And we're talking about what a dementia coach is and how a dementia coach can help. And one of the things that Dr. Kate does is facilitate memory cafes where caregivers and their loved ones, or even, as we found out, people that have been newly diagnosed with some type of dementia find it comfortable to go and interact with others. So you're very busy all the time, Dr. Kate, I know, and I know people are listening and maybe they've never heard about a dementia coach. Do you do telephone consultations?
I do. In fact, that's mostly what I do because of home life, because of the adult day, and because of the memory cafes, to squeeze everybody in. And actually, to be honest, folks, because of the practical nature, I think, they only want like a time or two. I have one family that calls me about once a year, and I go out and tweak things, and we talk about some strategies. And an example is this particular fellow is probably perseverating or forgetting, but constantly aware that he needs to use his urinal beside the bed. Well, the wife is getting no sleep. So the practical nature of my advice included a memory foam buffer. Like, I actually suggested a king-size memory foam bed, but they just went for the topper. And because the memory foam keeps her maybe less aware of him getting up, because he's just sitting up, but it wakes her every time. They were in a standard full-size bed, and so I have found in my own life it's a lot easier to sleep with a memory foam because you don't notice the other person so much with the rolling, and of course king size, and then they even a body pillow. She said, I can't be out past his bedtime because he has to sleep with me. And the daughter, she went out and got a body pillow, and it seems to be we're gradually weaning him so that she could actually stay out past 8, because that's kind of useful. So the memory foam pillow, we suggested some earplugs, the wax earplugs, because she's right there.
So you're finding practical solutions as the dementia progresses. So some people need only a yearly tune-up, like you just said. They call you once a year, and you kind of bring them up to date with what they can do, depending upon what their circumstances have changed. But other people might be in a crisis, or other people might need you more often. So you work over the telephone helping these people, because I think a lot of caregivers find it pretty daunting to have to sometimes go to an office to talk about what they need or find out what they can be done to help them. And it's just too difficult to, manage that, having appointments and getting in a car and going and worrying about who's going to care for your loved ones. So I think having the freedom to be able to pick up the phone and ask a question could be a really good lifesaver sometimes for a caregiver.
Yeah, it's for sure. And I have met with folks who are in crisis, and I've met, 3 or 4 times, but I'm quick to refer out because the most recent one, it was much more was needed. So I consulted with my known and trusted referral folk, and we came up with a list of 3 or 4 good psychiatrists, because it was actually a medication need, who understood dementia. And that's important, So, if somebody was calling from your neck of the woods, I would refer to you, Marcia, because you would be able to tell me, what referral sources I could.
Absolutely. It's all about networking and knowing who to turn to. And I think that's what caregivers just need. They need a big network, and it doesn't have to be real big. It just has to be the right kind and the right people on your team to help facilitate these things. So I thought today, while I had you on the phone, Dr. Kate, it might be interesting to a lot of caregivers if we actually talked about a few real cases that I have encountered in the years, and find out maybe what you would recommend to them, or get your advice or your opinion about the situation. So are you wanting to do that with me today?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a good plan.
So I want to let everybody know all the facts that I'm going to be sharing are true. No names, of course, but because the facts are general, most of them, they could be any family. It could be any patient and any family going through this, because we find that so a lot of the issues and circumstances and problems that come up, they do overlap, and they are a lot of them are the same. So this is not any one particular case that you could maybe pinpoint, but it might relate to you or to somebody that you know, because a lot of the information is very common. So let's take this first one, Dr. Kate. There's a family member, a distant family member, who has a cousin, actually, 69 years old, and they're currently living in their own home, and they have some aides coming 2 times a week for 3 hours a day. And this person has dementia, has been diagnosed with dementia, but, this person is young, 69 years old, and physically in good health. Because they're 69, they're in physically good health. This person needs cueing, needs reassurance, but the person is anxious. The person is social, likes talking and interacting with others. They still have good long-term memory, but short-term memory is pretty much gone. They're mild-mannered, and this person who's 69 years old is aware of his disease. So therefore, he is depressed and lonely. And because he only has interaction with somebody 2 times a week for 3 hours a day, he's bored. So in a nutshell, looking at this particular situation, would there be something that you in general as a dementia coach could suggest or would recommend for this family situation?
Yes, I would instantly, because I know how expensive care is. I would not look at home health, upping home health. I would, however, look at how we could make those 3 hours more effective, because what I find is too many times home health comes in and they do not have the training to meet the person where they're at. I see, and I don't want to say this, it's not all home health, but sometimes they're trained to be CNAs and they just think, well, I fed him his lunch, so I'm going to sit here and look at my cell phone. And that's not the 3 hours we want. We want 3 hours where they understand that they're going to accomplish these 4 different activities, or these 3 or these 2 activities that are based on this individual's biography that he likes to do.
Right.
So it's not just bathing and whatever that is that they're helping him with.
Right, more interaction to be the more productive and
actually more of a companion.
Right,
and that's a companion care.
Yes, and a lot of home health companies are now starting to be more proactive in that area, but
With
because there's just
yes.
hundreds and thousands of different companies out there, you want to really dig and find one that's going to meet that need, because they all aren't
Absolutely.
the same. Yeah.
They aren't all the same. But more than that, then my next thing is to suggest that he maybe find a resource, like here we have what we call Care Ride or DART, that can get him out to, say, an adult day, or we now call that, I had a fella come to mind today, he comes to the social club, because the whole adult day has a terrible stigma. It's the worst name in history. So to go to an adult day program sounds very diminishing, but to go to a social club makes sense. And so he could come in as a volunteer. I have folks that volunteer. They're really participants, but their name tag says volunteer, because it's a way to validate that you are young, you are strong, your long-term care memory is great. You simply need cueing. So we understand that you're not over here with the folks that need a lot more, but we also want to include you, and we want to, again, looking at validation, validate what you're bringing to the table. So adult day is kind of, I think, one of the pieces on that 1 to 10 spectrum, particularly for a younger person. Even in my husband's life, the neuropsychologist said, you need to find a way to volunteer, because you're giving back, and it helps with that depression, and it helps with the loneliness.
Right, and that's why your husband, assists with the Memory Cafe, because it gives him a purpose too. Even with his dementia, has a purpose, and he's volunteering with you. I think that's awesome.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
let's go on to another scenario. This one is a 93-year-old dad, very highly intelligent, good career, great health, uses a walker. He's diabetic on a sliding scale, so he gets insulin shots. He's confused. He needs cueing. He's creative. He likes working with his hands. He's quiet but has a sense of humor, always smiling, very appreciative, and has hearing aids. And he broke his hip and now ended up in a rehab. He was living at home with the wife. He's 93, and this is what's going on with him, and the wife is overwhelmed. What do you see in this situation?
And he's still in the rehab?
He's in the rehab, mm-hmm.
Okay, so time is short as far as what she's going to have to do next, because Medicare has a little bit of a ticking clock on his rehab. I would, and I don't know finances, of course, but I would look for kind of a step down from the rehab. Like, I wouldn't bring him right home. I hear that the wife is exhausted and overwhelmed. So I would suggest maybe a 30-day respite stay or a trial stay. This is not going to apply to this woman, but I always suggest to people that they plan ahead and know where, in the worst case scenario, where would I put so-and-so, to make some sort of commitments like that. But I think depending on their region, we could find professionals that would help guide. But I would suggest that he go from rehab to yet another kind of home-like setting that would give him some social engagement. One of the things I think that people often fail to realize is that, and I realized it when I was taking care of my father-in-law, you can keep people safe, you can keep them dry, you can keep them nutritionally sound, but it's very difficult to do all that and keep them socially engaged. So what we see is when folks are in a good, say, memory care setting, as an example, a good memory care community where there is a lot of engagement that's very dementia specific. So in other words, not the assisted living that's going to put in a full-length movie, because this gentleman is not going to follow a full-length movie.
Right.
But he might love a few 20-minute Carol Burnett segments, coupled with some singing and some exercise and a place to take a nice, good walk. And that would give, if it's the right kind of community, it would give his wife a place to see him thrive. It doesn't mean she's committed. It doesn't mean she's going to leave him there, but it gives her another 30 days. It gives them both more time, more focus from a medical standpoint as well as the social standpoint.
Absolutely. Good answer.
To help heal.
Good. I want to take a little minute here, Dr. Kate, for you to go ahead and give your contact information so people are listening to you assess these simple situations. And of course, they are more involved in what we can do here, but they can see where you have that initial, gut reaction. This is, the situation, and you can assess it. And they may have a situation that you can help them with. So how can they contact you?
I have, let me give you my name spelling, because the spelling will maybe hold people up. I'm Kate with a C, so I can be reached by email, if somebody's email, and that's CATEM, as in Michael, CCARTY @gmail. I have a website, katemccarty.com, and that's CATEMCCARTY.com. And then I have my phone number, which is 813-384-7571.
Okay, give that phone number again, Dr. Kate, please.
Sure, it's 813-384-7571.
Great. So if you all are listening and you hear something that you want to explore a little bit more with a dementia coach, you can call Dr. Kate and she'll help you. So we're talking about different scenarios. And, there's one, I'm just going to talk about it over the top of my head that I remember so well. There was a mom, and the daughter was worried about her because the neighbors were calling and saying that mom was walking out of the house all hours of the night and getting lost. The mom was recently widowed. She had dementia, and the daughter came to see me about coming into memory care. The daughter was like what you said, Dr. Kate, not the denial, but the whatever you call it, reality avoidance.
Avoidant coping. Not coping at all, in other words.
But she was in denial, I think, about how her mother was progressing, and instead of coming to a memory care community, and her mother was older, very confused, repetitive, she definitely had short-term memory loss. The daughter decided to put mom in a regular assisted living against what I thought she should do, but we don't, we can just suggest, we don't make people do things.
Right.
Which turned out to be several months later, not such a great idea, because the mom, like you would say, Dr. Kate, some of the things that happen to a person, where they're at in their dementia. So the person was ostracized by the other people. She wasn't going down to the dining room. She wasn't eating. There were a lot of things that were happening, and unbeknownst to the daughter, until she finally got to see the mom after a few months, because the daughter had traveled and was gone out of the country, and realized that this was a problem because mom was depressed, mom was losing weight, mom was declining, and that really obviously wasn't the best place for her to be. So with a dementia coach like Dr. Kate can assess these situations by phone even and make recommendations. It doesn't take the place of a doctor. It doesn't take the place of someone, in your local community who could be hands-on. But just to get that, I don't know, Dr. Kate, could you call it a second opinion?
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, the practical, because you won't necessarily get the practical from your MD.
Okay,
But,
there you go. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time today. Thank you, Dr. Kate, for joining us. I had a good time talking with you, and appreciate you calling in, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Very good. Thank you so much, Marcia.
You're welcome. And thank you all for joining in, too. So we'll see you next time, same place, next week, every Tuesday. And in the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug, because they need it, and so do you. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those